Welcome back to Division I Rejects, episode 163. For those of you who have followed along for quite some time, you know that in season, 2 episodes a week, things are moving really fast. We got a lot of players, a lot of coaches on. The off season is a great time to sit back and reflect and get a lot of different perspectives on the game. I think that's a great way of prefacing into this episode. Tonight, I'm joined by 2 great guests, guys that have been around small school football for a long time, even have played it, but currently, their job is not playing the game. It's not coaching the game. It's not really in that capacity. Joined first by Mike Rittelmann, who is the scouting director and player personnel guy over at CGS, which is the College Gridiron Showcase. He's now just accepted a position as an area scout for the Edmonton Elks up there in the CFL as well. Excited to talk with him about all the opportunities that CGS offers to small school football players. Now, small school in their eyes, FCS, and everything lower. So they do have a lot of opportunities for D3, NAI, D2 guys to kind of show their talents and get them to the next stage, whether that's the NFL or some kind of other professional league. He joins me shortly. Also joined later in the episode, Logan Hansen, a name for those of you involved with D3 football are probably very familiar with. He is the creator and founder of Hansen Ratings, who has put out for the last decade, very quality, insightful, different analytics, models, predictive models, kind of algorithms and things of that nature. Everything from a mathematical statistics standpoint of Division III football, things that are created and curated specifically for D3 football. He does a fantastic job in that sense in providing a different view of Division III football and everything that has to go with it. He did just release his Division III football preseason rankings for every team in Division III football. And using that model, it's something that I think more people should be very interested in. It's a very cool topic. It's something we don't see a lot of at this level. You see a lot of those things used at the higher levels of football and other college sports, but I think he's doing a great thing there. So we're joined by the 2 of them tonight. Otherwise, storylines from me to you. We've got an NAIA team with some big locker room upgrades. St. Xavier, stick around for that one. Really great quality NAIA squad. How about a D2 team picking up a D1 transfer at the quarterback position, a certain squad over in the NSIC, getting some help at the signal caller spot. And then finally, we do have a breakdown of some D2 football top talent update from the transfer portal, seeing these guys, where they're coming from, where they're going. Some guys staying in that D2 realm, moving around from powerhouse to powerhouse. Others making that jump up to FCS or even FBS, even Power 4, a couple of those guys. So we'll touch on a lot of them. A lot has changed even just the last week as I record this episode. But as always, you can watch the episode on YouTube if you are. Look at the bottom of the screen there, red line, timestamps, video chapters. Fast forward through any part of the video you want to check out. Get the hell out of here after that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to us, I appreciate you. Every single one of you listening. Go ahead and I put out my annual reminder, cop some merch. Here's the t-shirt right here. It looks pretty nice. I'm blocking it with the microphone. There you are. But cop the merch, looking at maybe making some small school product merch as well. I feel like that'd be pretty sweet. But enough of my rambling. Subscribe. Follow us on the socials. Appreciate all your support. Let's get into that first conversation with the man himself, Mike Rittelmann. Joining the show tonight, the Director of Scouting and Player Personnel for the CGS All-Star Game. Quite the title. Features all kinds of small school talent. Each year, FCS on down to a lot of schools we cover. Also serves now as an area scout for the 14-time Grey Cup champs, the Edmonton Elks. Mike Rittelmann. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Excited to get you on here. Like I was kind of telling you before we got going, we get a lot of hustle and bustle during the season, players, coaches, that kind of thing. But to get people with A, your skill set, and B, your mindset and perspective on here in the off season is the stuff I live for. So I'm excited to chat with you about all of it.
I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the kind words, man. I'm happy to be on, talk some ball.
Hell yeah. And we'll get to, we'll talk more about Edmonton later, but because it's so, I think, recent and fresh, talk about spending a week up there just recently. You made that announcement just a few months ago, I believe. What does that role entail with Edmonton moving forward for you?
Yeah, so I have a title of area scout, and our scouting department consists of Chris Jones, who's the general manager, and then also the head coach, and G. Roy Simon, who's the assistant GM, and we have a bunch of other scouts on our team, and it's a great staff. Got to learn the ins and outs of the CFL game. The tradition of Edmonton football in the CFL, and it was awesome. It was a great experience to be up there for a week.
I believe that. Like I said, we'll most definitely come back to that one. But I do want to talk a lot about CGS because it's something that
Yep.
I was only introduced to this year, and I preface everything on this show that I talk about with the fact that I've not been covering small school football since like the 80s or 90s, and I'm very new to this. But
Yep.
so I'm still learning, which is the benefit of that, and I get to see a lot of cool things. CGS being one of those things. Talk about the purpose that you and the rest of that group over there, what you guys aim to serve, and what you aim to do for a lot of these small school athletes. For those people who maybe aren't familiar.
Absolutely. So we cover all divisions of college football. FBS down, FBS, FCS, D2, D3, NAIA, even international. And what the two co-founders, Jose Jefferson and Craig Red, have done, have created this platform with the College Gridiron Showcase. It's been phenomenal. We just finished our 10th year, our 10th event this past year in Fort Worth. We want to give guys the opportunity to perform in front of NFL teams. We had all 32 NFL teams, all 9 CFL teams in attendance. Also a representative from the UFL, also IFL, Arena Leagues, and
Big
we had
time.
150. We had 155 plus scouts there. And we had some personnel coordinators as well. So there are some decision makers, not the GMs or anything, but again, those people who come into those rooms and make those final decisions on draft day, help that make that final decision. Um, it's an awesome opportunity. Our niche is that fifth through seventh round undrafted free agent type of guy.
Yep.
I heard a stat a couple weeks ago that NFL rosters are 30% made, 30 something percent made of undrafted free agents, late round guys. That's our niche. That's what we want to aim for. We want to help bring to light those core special teams guys, the core guys that make up the back end of the roster. And for the last 10 years, I think we've done that.
Absolutely. I would certainly agree with that with the limited knowledge that I have of what you guys are going on over there. And even just talking with Mike last week, there's so many hurdles to jump for these guys just getting to that point in their career, right? And then you have to jump and overcome even more after that. I think just a little example of a guy like him who is a quarterback going into the Cowboys. Now, it wasn't a rookie mini camp, it was more of a tryout basis and their orientation type deal. But he doesn't get his hands on a playbook or any type of team materials until he shows up, and he's got a 2-day turnaround. And now, how do you put yourself in the best position with those circumstances to try and give yourself a look? So anything that you guys do as far as, and you guys pride yourself on giving them kind of a pro environment. You run the couple of days as like a OTAs is kind of my impression. Talk
Yeah.
about that and kind of the structure of what goes on over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an OTA style format. Then we have a game at the end of the week. So they can play fast, play physical, but we're not installing. I mean, offensively, we're holding up a card saying, "Hey,
Okay.
offense, I need an X receiver. Hey, go here," so they can play fast without thinking. Defensively, we're going to go between 4-2-5 look, a 3-4, even front, that type of deal. Cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 0. I mean, we're going to let them play fast. Let them show why they're here. Why they got all those accolades, why they're here, why they're playing fast and physical football, and to attract attention to professional teams.
100%. Now, that coaching staff that you have there, what is that comprised of? Does that change on a year-to-year basis? What goes into bringing those people together to help run and coach these athletes up?
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Jose Jefferson, who's the executive director, one of the co-founders, he's in charge of our coaching staff. He's brought in guys that have been, with the event for the last 10 years. A lot of different backgrounds: NFL players, CFL players, NFL coaching, CFL coaching, UFL, the whole nine. So again, they're getting a diverse background of coaches, and we do bring on some new coaches each year. Not
Okay.
a lot. We do have a good nucleus of coaches right now, but Jose does a phenomenal job. Bringing in a great coaching staff. They're smart. They're efficient. They get the job done, and they provide a great work environment for our players.
Yeah, that's big time. And when you talk about the guys who get that opportunity, I know there's a kind of nomination slash selection process. Talk about what that looks like, at least just taking,
Yep.
for me, taking a quick glance at your guys' website and some of that information and material. Talk about that process and what that entails for some of the student athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. So our scouting team comprises of Jose Jefferson and Craig Red, the two co-founders, myself. We just brought on Gina Camilleri, who's going to be the assistant director of player personnel and scouting, on with us. Gina's done a great job with us, so I'm excited to see him in that new role. And then we have a partnership with Tracking Football. Mark Branstead and his team at Tracking Football do a phenomenal job. They work with a lot of the big programs are working with the D2s and D3s, bringing an analytical background of track data. Case in point, make if they had a track data, they had other sport data, we comprise that all in. That helps us make our selection process a whole heck of a lot easier because it gives another piece of information to see the athlete as a whole.
Yeah.
So we usually start that about late July, building our watch list. Present the watch list in August, and then we'll start sending invites probably early November. But it's a process. On the watch list, we'll have 500 plus players on it. Again, we want to invite the top 250 to 300 players in the country, regardless of division, that fit that niche, that fifth through seventh round niche, undrafted free agent label, that we want to come to present the teams in Fort Worth.
Yeah, and that operates, I mean, at least seemingly from what I'm hearing, very similar to talk about like guys who are working in scouting departments for professional teams, where you go out and you have these prospects that you obviously do these player evals and scouting reports on, and you almost kind of stick your neck out for these guys in a way because you believe in these guys, you watch their film, you break it down, and you bring them in and try and have them come in and show. And so I guess that kind of bringing that over to talking about this transition, to the Elks, did that, at least from an outsider's perspective, that seems like a pretty easy decision because of the role you are in currently right now? Talk about what kind of spurred that and what made it either yes or maybe not so easy of a decision for you to bring that on that role.
Chris and G-Roy presented this opportunity with me. I've known them the last couple of years working with a CGS, and it was a great opportunity. I'm excited to be a part of the team. Like I said, we have a great staff. On the Elks now, the scouting department. I was up there and got the watch training camp. Our coaching staff's phenomenal. I'm excited for the CFL season to start up here next week.
Yep.
The regular season, but no, it was too good of an opportunity to pass up, and I'm excited to have this dual role, with CGS and Edmonton as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's pretty perfect world. You get to continue that role and then just kind of grow and add on to that. And I mean, you talk about your niche there, and there's a lot of guys, there's crossover there. When you talk about the CGS guys, the guys who are typically showcased on that platform, a lot of them probably do end up with either CFL chances or playing in the CFL. I know right before we started recording, John Matoka just signed with the Argos, I believe. Up there in Toronto. Yeah, the reigning Harlan Hill winner from a few years back. He had the Broncos minicamp invite, but I think it just goes to show, like, the dude broke every record in the book. But you've seen the dude, and he doesn't maybe have the measurables that compete at an NFL level, which I'm sure for a lot of teams probably why they wrote him off. But now he's getting a chance in the CFL. I know he's not the first, he won't be the last in those kind of shoes. But with those CGS guys, it seems like, I mean, you brought up Mike as soon as we started talking earlier. It seems like you follow along with them. I mean, you really do keep in touch with a lot of those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, even if they don't stay in playing in professional football, a lot of guys are doing phenomenal things in the coaching world. Winston Delatit, who's the defensive line coach from University of Minnesota, he was a CGS alum. He played at Minnesota, was a great defensive end, got in the coaching world doing phenomenal things. Kevin Richardson, who was at Arkansas, is now coaching D-backs at Illinois. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, it's just you want to keep touch with these guys because these guys are doing phenomenal things on and off the football field.
And that's neat. I think that's really cool because I don't think you see that very often as someone who, I'm not super in touch with all the different bowls and showcases that go on, but I don't know if many of them have that kind of aspect of following these guys. Like you said, whether or not they are continuing their football career, because it is easy for, at least from like a social media and other standpoint, to post someone who played in your bowl game or whatever, your showcase years back that, hey, they won a Super Bowl or they just got a big contract or whatever, to kind of claim them in that way. But to follow them and endorse them in that fashion, I think is really neat. I don't think we see maybe a whole lot of that.
We have a good communication with the other All-Star games. Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl does a phenomenal job. Eric Galco of the East West Shrine game. The guys down at the Hula Bowl do a good job as well. So, I mean, it's a good community, interacting with everyone, and during the All-Star game season, everyone does a phenomenal job of that.
That's good. Yeah, no, it's good that there's communication and obviously just like minds working together on that kind of thing. I gave your title earlier on, you get Director of Scouting and Player Personnel, and as a football guy, I kind of understand some of the pieces that come with that. But if you had to describe that to someone, what's the day-to-day look for you when it comes to CGS?
just making sure I'm on the same page as Craig and Jose. You know,
There you
they're
go.
they're they're, they're my bosses, and they do a phenomenal job. I consider them great friends and great
It's good.
mentors, and just making sure we're all on the same page. And like I mentioned, Gino's coming on board with a new role. So I mean, it's a great team with working with Mark's team as well at track and football. Just making sure everyone's on the same page, and we want to make sure the event goes without a hiccup, and it has gone without a hiccup the last 10 years, and looking forward to year 11.
Yeah. And obviously, you guys have, in those days, there's a lot of time being on the field, evaluating those guys and getting them in front of the right eyes that you talked about earlier on, whether it is CFL, NFL, even UFL, those kind of other indoor, even those other leagues, right? Getting them in front of those eyes is very important. But it sounds like, too, just, again, reading what I could, that you guys provide them with some other seminars and other pieces that they go
Absolutely.
and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
Go right into it, man. Life skills,
Yeah,
career
no,
services, all those things.
that's such a great point. So we actually have parent seminars too, and
Really?
then we actually have financial seminars. What's
Okay.
that first year in the league is going to look like from a financial standpoint? And
Yeah.
not to dive deep into it, but I mean, just give you that perspective from a parent and as a first year athlete in the league, whether it be CFL, NFL, anything like that. It's going to be, we want to give them the tools, the aspects, to prepare themselves, for that next level, that next step, or just a small blip in their draft process. But we want to give them the right tools to continue that success throughout the draft process. And then if they are blessed enough to get drafted or sign with a team,
Mm-hmm.
now they know, okay, this is what I can expect going into that process.
That's big time. And again, it's a holistic deal, right? It's everything that
Yep.
comes with it, and that was, that's a big part of all their lives, especially if they do, like you said, fortunate enough to be in that position. Talking again, keep referencing Mike because he's a guy that's been through that, and we talked with him so recently. He's been on the show a couple times, but talking with him and just in general. Quarterback, obviously, if you're talking about positions that translate to the NFL out of small schools, quarterback's near the bottom of the list. Just because of the nature of that position and it being so vital to squads and the kind of the media attention that surrounds it, but amongst numerous other things, is there a position or two in your mind that you see the most that translates? You have X amount of guys from smaller schools that, hey, at these couple positions, they got a much better spot of making a roster.
There's no, I hate to sound like, there's no cookie cutter answer for that.
Very fair. I didn't expect one. Yep.
No, it's a great question. A very, very good question from you. It's different for everyone. And the reason I say that is, okay, every team's different. Every organization's different. Every scouting department's different. How you look at a player might be different from another scouting department.
Yeah.
So whether or not that player is, in the right situation or what, or there's no crystal ball for it. And again,
That's fair. That's fair.
wow, that's a really good question. I mean, I want to tell you, these X amount of players from small schools, this position are better off going in this direction. No, like there's no cookie cutter answer. There's just, okay, if he's in the right situation and he's playing at a high level during training camp and everything, then the ball's in his favor. The ball's rolling in his favor. But no, again, each situation's different, each position's different, each organization's different. So that's the best I can give you from an answer perspective. So yeah.
That's all right. No, I totally understand that. Yeah, I'm just a curious note for me because then you look at draft trends in the last couple of years and you look at hot commodities off the board. I think offensive linemen, defensive backs probably pop off as far as like absolute number per position group that go off. So maybe just following some of those trends as definite needs for a lot of NFL teams, at least in recent history. But that's an interesting piece. But I think what you said is important because it's all about the right system and having these guys in the right system that they can shine and show their respective skill sets, because if you get them in a different spot, they might not have the same production, they might not look the same on film, and yada, yada, yada. And that's where, with the transfer portal and everything else, we've seen interesting things. Interesting in the way that we have we have had a lot of Division II, D3 NAI athletes that have Division I talent. That's no secret. There have been guys every year that probably can go make that jump, and now a lot of them are doing so. Have you seen Again, this could be a tougher one, but have you seen much benefit overall from those guys making that jump to Division I and maybe not being, quote unquote, the guy at their school compared to being in a smaller school program and kind of being the feature person in that offensive or defensive scheme?
All I would just say is just do your homework. Do your homework. Make sure you're going to the right situation because again, it's going back to every situation's different. You know, the allure of going up to a big level is such a attractive opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Say for a guy from going D2 to FBS, which we've seen. And
Absolutely.
I apologize, I don't have a name off the top of my head,
That's
but
okay.
what I tell guys is just make sure you do your homework. Make sure this is the right situation because I've seen guys that gone to bigger schools and their draft outlook changes a little bit because they're not the guy and
Yeah.
they weren't getting as many reps as before. So again, do your homework. Make sure it's the right situation. Enjoy the process. Whatever works for you, it's going to be your decision in the end. And you can't tell a guy, oh, don't do this, don't do this. Whatever you feel is right, whatever your gut is telling you, okay, I want to do this, then go through with it. But make sure that you've done all the homework, you've done all the research because you know a mistake can happen, and then again, it could cost a different outlook on your draft journey.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. Like you said, there's very much not a cookie cutter answer for that one. And it is very situation based, position based, person based, right? And that gets lost. And I think the whole process as well is what does that affect for you outside of football? Are you making a move across the country? Are you moving away from family and other things of that nature? How does that affect who you are off the field? But yeah, that's about all I had for you, man. I'm excited to see and follow along more closely now that I'm familiar with one CGS and more getting familiar with the CFL as well as we move forward and I follow some of these small school guys getting their chance up in that.
We need to get you down there, CGS, man.
Yeah, I would very much love that. I really would.
We love having media come down there. We have a media day. You can interview all the players down there. I mean, you're more than welcome to come down. So we'll announce the dates here soon for the 2025 event, and then all media are welcome. So the watch list is coming out this summer. So there's a lot of talent at the D2, D3, and AI levels. We invite top talent from the Canadian colleges. We've had international players before, so CGS is a great event, man. If you're someone who's interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me. Love talking about CGS, love talking about ball, and then it's all about building relationships in the football industry.
You seem to be doing just that, and now you get the chance to go do it in another league with a new set of people. Really excited for you, man. And
I appreciate it.
Thank you for spending some knowledge tonight. I appreciate you joining me, taking some time.
I hope to come back on sometime. We'll talk more. And if you have T-shirts, I always love repping T-shirts, man. So it's all good. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice it. I was looking at the logo on the screen here, but no, that's awesome. But no, thank you again so much. This has been awesome, and like I said, hope to get you down to CGS.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on here and chat with me.
Awesome. Thanks again, man.
Have a good one. A big thank you to Mike for joining me tonight, talking all about the CGS and also his new role with the Edmonton Elks. We've seen, I mentioned John Matocha earlier. That could be a news point in itself for tonight. John Matocha signing with the Toronto Argonauts after a brief shot with the Broncos mini camp there. The reigning Harlan Hill winner from just a couple of years ago, a dude that broke so many records in Division II football. He and so many others getting great opportunities in the CFL and other professional leagues. Mike Rittelmann, the team over there at CGS, very much a big part of that. But we can move over. Let's talk about St. Xavier, the NAIA team, that has just historically been a very solid squad, at least in recent history. You're talking about a perennial top 25 football team, a playoff caliber NAIA squad. They released this just the other day, a new locker room renovation project. And you take a look at these pictures. I think we see more and more of it just about every couple months here. We've got new schools dropping these projects, and it's great for me. It's great for me because I have more stuff to cover and talk about when it comes to small school football. But I mean, it's great for me in a sense that these schools are leveling up, and I think the line between these NAIA, D2, those kind of squads, but to that FCS level is becoming a lot more blurred. Because what do you think about when you think of these Division I programs? Notice I didn't say Power 4, I didn't say FBS. Obviously, those guys are on a different level still when it comes to facilities and those kind of things. But when you talk, quote-unquote, small school, small D1 football, that line, I think, starts to get a little bit more blurred when you see facilities like this. And now this obviously isn't done. Renders of things, they have a project and fundraising project going on right now that I'll talk about more. But when you look at projects like this, for a kid, a recruit, prospective student athlete, and their families, I think something big that obviously shows on unofficial or official visits at the facilities and just the actual physical places where these kids spend the most of their time, where the coaching staffs are housed, how they're taking care of their student athletes and everyone that's involved with those programs. When you see more and more of these caliber of updates come out, you're like, man, maybe NAIA ball ain't so bad, because look at this. I mean, this is incredible. And again, I'm not an idiot. I know these are renders. Do not come after me. But like the fact that this is something that this program, this department, this university thinks is possible with their donors and their fundraising capabilities, that's a good sign that this is probably going to happen, guys. I've been around quite a few of these locker room renovations here and working in the college athletics landscape. And typically that doesn't mean these things are on a pretty good track to becoming reality and coming to fruition. I believe there's another shot here. I mean, come on. That's clean. That is really nice. Great open space there. Great branding. The lighting looks electric. The lockers are sweet. The color scheme is just, I mean, that's easy. That's awesome. Really cool. So those are kind of the renders of what this locker room is proposed to look like. Now, you can kind of see on the right side of your screen over there, if you are viewing on YouTube, don't worry, I'll read it aloud if you're listening, but there's a message from their head coach. It says, "Dear SXU football supporters, I'm excited to share that we have launched a campaign to renovate and expand the current football locker room in the SXU Urso Outdoor Sports Center. This bold project will be a game changer for current and future Cougars, as well as serve as a source of pride for the entire SXU football family, including alumni, parents, and friends of the program. Part of the campaign, we are now launching a Name a Locker campaign. All past and current Cougar football players will be given an exclusive opportunity to have their name, jersey number, and years played permanently displayed on a locker." And so, again, if you've been around college football, you've seen one of these things happen before. They're not reinventing the wheel with this, but it's a great way to get all kinds of alumni and different fans and friends of the program involved. If you do want to be a part of that, you know, for whatever reason, I've reached the right target audience here and you want to be a part of this, you can scroll down to the bottom of that tweet. They got a link there, or just get in contact with them. But again, that's great news for the Cougars over there at St. Xavier, because that facility is just going to give them just another edge to what is already a really prominently solid NAIA football squad. You look at their last year in 2023, you see an 8-4 record. And again, first of all, 8-4, that's great in its own right, but what are those 4 losses, right? I'll tell you this, their first loss was at number 6 in the country at the time, Marian University. They lose by a touchdown, 21-28. And then you go the next week against number 5, Indiana Wesleyan. They don't lose by a touchdown. They lose by 1 point against an Indiana Wesleyan team that, I mean, obviously was just a top caliber squad. Now, 2 weeks later, they go at number 13. They pull out the win in overtime against St. Francis. Their other loss during the regular season, because they only had 3 losses during the regular season, that came to a really prominent Division II squad in the GLIAC, Saginaw Valley State. They go and play, actually Saginaw Valley traveled to St. Xavier and played them, so their other loss to a Division II squad doesn't really even count towards the playoffs. They go back and beat Marian once again in the playoffs and lose to the team that went to the finals in Northwestern College, lost to them in the quarters. So you talk about a squad last year that experienced a lot of success, played in a lot of really high caliber football games, which is a great indicator of some potential success they'll have in 2024, and we can at least take a peep at this 2024 schedule for the Cougs. And I think for me, I'll pull it up here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. What jumps out, and that first one kind of gets cut off my screen there, I apologize for that. What jumps out, you see Lawrence Tech is week 1. What week 2, though? How about St. Thomas? out of Florida in that week 2 slot for them. A big time out of conference get for the Cougars. St. Thomas 9-4 last year, won a game in the playoffs, lost in that second round of the playoffs in 23. This is a team that, again, this is going to be a guaranteed top 25 matchup between these two squads, to start off 2024, basically. That's going to be a really exciting one. And then you look down the line, Concordia, Ann Arbor. You got Indiana Wesleyan, St. Francis, Marion, and then other St. Francis. Those are 5 teams. There you are on the screen there. 5 teams that, in my opinion, all have the potential to be ranked when they do end up meeting them. That's no shots at Defiance or Olivet Nazarene or Judson, any of those squads, but those are 5 squads. When you look at this, all 5 of those teams could potentially be ranked when this St. Xavier team comes to town or when they face off on their home field, respectively. So a lot of big things to happen, but like I said, when you have a team that's so familiar playing with those big-time atmospheres and environments, it's only going to do wonders for you moving forward. But let's continue on the storylines from this past week of small school football. This one comes from Northern State in the NSIC, and you'll see right here, the headline, you don't see it on the screen, but it says, Northern State adds Division I transfer at quarterback. And Mike Schmidt, the head coach down there, he announced the signing of Daniel Britt today as in, this is the 23rd when this happened, so it's a little while ago, but it's been just a few days, about 4 days since this happened. But Daniel Britt, he's coming from Northern Arizona University and Montana, so he has seen time at a couple different Division I institutions, and I think what's kind of actually interesting about that fact is, for those of you who follow small school football and Division II, I guess, coaching cycles, if you will, the former head coach from Pittsburgh State, and I'm going to blank on his name right now because that's just the timing I'm on today, he is moving up to Northern Arizona. He's already up there. And now you have this D2 coach who comes up, and now you got the quarterback, or probably not the starter, but a quarterback from that team making his way down to Division II, which is an exciting deal for this Northern State squad that, has kind of been at the middle of the road at NSIC. They've struggled, but they have certainly surprised teams at a few points along the way. The quote from head coach Mike Schmidt says here, "We are thrilled to announce the signing of Daniel Britt. He's a talented and proven quarterback with winning DNA. His mobility and accuracy make him a dual threat option for Coach Hine in our offense. We look forward to what he will bring to our team." He says here, "We had transfers to enhance our roster. We have no doubt that Daniel will help out our football program." I tell you right now, I don't know Daniel, never seen him play in my life. He's probably going to help out your football program. Dude's probably a talented dude. If he's played at 2 of those squads, we know what Montana's done, and he's been a part of that squad. Northern Arizona hasn't been held in that same regard, but Montana's a team that, anyone who knows FCS football knows about Montana. So Britt is originally from Las Vegas. He spent 2 years at Montana, one with NAU. He's 5'11", 190 pounds, kind of fits the bill of a prototypical maybe D2 quarterback, right? And dude just has not seen a whole lot of playing time at either of his last stops. And I'm assuming that prompts the move down to Division II to Northern State to play in the bank over there in South Dakota. Absolute fantastic stadium, if you saw it when I pulled it up there. But a guy who had all the accolades coming out of high school. Excited to see what he does with this Northern State squad that, again, like a team that's been kind of middle of the road and just hasn't succeeded maybe in the way that they want to. But you talk about the NSIC conference as a whole, Minnesota State, Bemidji, Augustana, like these are teams that have just been rolling as of late, and it's hard for a squad like Northern State to really get out and get above. They were 5-6 last year, again with some quality losses. Bemidji State, Minnesota Duluth, Winona, Moorhead had a really high-powered offense last year. And then you look at teams like Wayne State over in Nebraska. Like there's some really tough squads in this conference that they've been competing against. I think this is a great get for them. And if you look at their quarterback production in last year, meaning 2023, this past fall, pulling it up here because I don't remember. I'm not great with like numbers off the top of my head here. But what you'll see is they had a really split bag, right, from Northern State. There wasn't maybe one guy that was doing it all for them, and they're hoping, I would assume, that this Britt can step in and kind of be the face of that offense over there for the Wolves. You had Colton Hackle, Jacob Van Lindenham, and Anthony Vespo. 3 of them all attempted over 80 passes last year, with Hackle attempting 152, so he certainly had the majority of the reps. But there are 3 guys with over 80 pass attempts in 1 year. And that's something that you don't see very often at any level. Say at Division II level, you don't see that very often. So for these 3 guys to all kind of have an interesting role there with the team, Hackle, the one who did lead in that respect and had the most passing yards out of all of them, he's only a redshirt freshman. So that'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes into the equation. The second one, Van Lindingham, was a grad student, so I'm assuming he will be gone. And then Vespo's a junior. So let's assume, if I don't know, the otherwise, let's assume 2 of those 3 quarterbacks are coming back. We'll see if Britt goes in there. He's still got to compete for the job. See if he earns that outright job over there for Northern State. That will be an interesting one. But before we wrap up with my last piece on transfer talent in D2 football, we're actually going to go over and jump down to the D3 scene with Logan Hansen, talking about his predictive models and analytics. Also joining the show tonight, the man that crunches numbers, creator of Hansen's Ratings, and knower of D3 football. It's Logan Hansen. What's up, man?
Not too much. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to get you on here. Like I told you before we got going, been following along with everything you do, and you contribute to the D3 football landscape. So to take that conversation off of the X or Twitter timeline, whoever you align yourself with, and bring it onto the podcast format, I personally am very excited about. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. I'm happy to talk about Division III football with anybody who loves Division III football.
Hell yeah. That's good. That's good. And it seems to be that there's a growing amount of us. At least this has been my impression of the last one, ever since I kind of stepped into this this game and getting more word out there. And that I think is in large part to the stuff that you and many other people do and getting these pieces out there and helping people to just get their foot in the door. Because I think that's the biggest part, right? You're just getting people to be interested. And then once you get them in, it becomes this deal of that they're reoccurring fans and they come out and they show support. But getting them, I think, at least in my perspective, getting that foot in the door is probably the toughest part.
Yeah, I'd agree. It does seem like there's more people covering it. Like when I was a player, so I played 2008 to 2011 at Wartburg, it was just d3football.com. And other than that, there was nowhere else to go to look for stuff. There were like Massey Ratings was still turning to look at like the statistical side of things. But now you've got, in the D3 football huddle, they operate out of the East Coast, and they used to just be like one conference, and now they cover it nationally. Yourself, there've been, I feel weird saying this, but I've been like doing my ratings and posting them online for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
There've been other companies that I've seen like try to get into it, but when it's somebody that's not like passionate about it, people who are can tell, and then it fizzles out after like a year or two. But yeah, I'm glad to see more people finding out about D3 football, getting into it, and covering it from a media side, especially like what you did at lacrosse this year, that game day out there. That was really cool to see. I'll be honest, I didn't get to watch it. I was at a Wartburg game, I think, that weekend. I'm usually at a football game on Saturdays, so that's how I spend my weekends.
I appreciate that. And we're looking to hopefully do some more of those this year, albeit probably not until the playoffs, just because of my schedule and the other schedules of the guys who helped me out. But that was a blast. I think you're spot on in the fact that, if somebody does try and enter this space and they're maybe not totally bought in or totally passionate about what this is, that's going to fizzle out very quickly. And I know that's something where myself and my podcast, I've gone through breaks. Started this thing in 2020 in my dorm room, and we've gone through a lot of different phases, and now we seem to be finally in this good rhythm where, myself and everyone I know is like Monday is podcast night. Like that's where we sit down. It's engraved in the schedule, and I'm all about it. And I'm lucky to be able to talk with guys like you, but let's talk about you and your kind of your journey to getting here. You talked about it. This is not, you didn't just burst onto the scene in the last couple of years doing this, something you've been passionate about. You've been putting a lot of time and effort into these different algorithms and models we'll talk about. But what is it? Obviously, you've been in the D3 football world. You talk about playing and being around it in that capacity. What is it that got you so interested in doing the more statistical, mathematical side of the deal and starting to create these models and distribute them as well?
So as a player, I played in, it was the Iowa Conference. Now
Yep.
it's called the American Rivers Conference. And, our coaches hammered it in our heads, like between Wisconsin Conference, Minnesota Conference, Iowa Conference, like this is, the heart of Division III football. You play in a premier football league. And then I went and I GA'd at UW-Platteville in the WEAC, and the D3football.com website would always do once or twice a year conference rankings, and I'd always see the Iowa Conference at like number 10, like kind of upper middle third, and I'm
Yep.
like, man, those guys they're full of it. I know more than they do. So, and then I filling out like an NCAA basketball bracket once, I found Ken Pomeroy and his rankings,
Of course.
and I said, somebody should do this for Division III football. So I started by just doing that, and I had like a WordPress site back in 2013 that I was posting on, that I probably got like 2 page views total, and then I just kept doing it and kept trying to make it better. And I think really the reason that I think it started catching on with people and people started giving me some credibility was because they knew that this model is just for Division III football. Like, you go to Massey Ratings, or Sagarin used to have it for Division III, and all these other power ratings online. They're all calibrated for FBS because that's what people think of when they think of college
Of course.
football.
Yeah, of course.
Division III is just so much different than FBS football, and the way that teams stay good or get good, and the recruiting, everything is just so different. So having a model that's really focused on just being good at predicting Division III football is really what I focused on.
I love that. And I think today that's probably more evident than ever, just the way that college athletics and the football landscape in particular has transformed throughout the last decade, of which you've started this and continued to grow this. What are some of those things, if you could pinpoint them, that separate, at least from that standpoint of creating these models and doing some of these predictive deals, that separate? Because on the outside, the differences are obvious, but when you talk about creating something that's going to try and predict and calculate, what are some of those things that maybe separate the FBS models from something that you're very familiar with at a D3 level?
Right. So I'd say the recruiting, and then how much data you can get on a team in a season. So in Division III, there's just fewer games. There are fewer games than Division II, fewer games than NAIA, fewer games than FCS, FBS. And you're not going to get as much geographic crossover. And then you're also going to get less conference crossover. There's more conferences now, ever since the NCAA changed the rule on how big your conference could be and still get an AQ. So now there's 29 conferences. Used to be only about 25 every year, 26. So teams had fewer non-conference games. So when you're trying to build an algorithm to rank teams, and say the American Southwest Conference down in Texas, there was a year that conference had 10 teams. So they have one non-conference game. And it's hard for them to schedule other Division IIIs, being where they're at geographically.
Absolutely.
The whole conference played 3 or 4 non-conference games against other Division III teams. So if you're doing a model like what most people do for Division I FBS, and you just, overfit it, solve it based on, all the data that we have is everything we need to know for this season, and that's the truth about how good these teams are. You're basing how good that conference is relative to the rest of the country just based on 3 games.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be a very good model. So my model has every single game that's been played since 1997 informing teams' ratings. And it's really like the last 5 games that a team plays is about half of their current rating. And then, so that's their half-life.
Okay.
And then, so about 75% of the current ratings are based on, like by the end of the year, are based on that year's results. 25% are based on everything they've done since 1997.
Okay. There you go. No, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. When you explain it, that it does. It makes a lot of sense. And, you have, I believe it's on your pinned tweet, actually. I went through and read at least a little bit of it, of more of the actual reasoning and explanation behind what goes into that model and those pieces. And I'll admit I did not read the entire piece. I'll be the first
It's
one
a
to tell
long
you
one.
that.
I think I knew it was going to be long when I started it, but I don't even remember I was on vacation with my family. We were down in Florida, and I knew that I was going to have downtimes when everybody else in the
Yeah.
family was taking a nap. So I'm like, all right, I got a week where I'm going to have an hour and a half every day to myself. And I'm like, all right, let's hammer this out and just get into the nitty gritty detail. If you got to the bottom, it said, hey, congrats if you made it this far. You're a complete psycho.
Yes, and scrolling through it for the people, I mean, just watching those who watch us on YouTube, like, I think they'll get a sense immediately of like, yeah, this is something that for someone who maybe stumbles across you and your platforms, to at least, I would assume in a sense, give you some kind of credibility for those who do read through this and say that this guy's not just plugging in numbers to something he found, some model he found on the internet. Like, this is something that he has crafted and meticulously put a lot of this effort into and really just innovated in a lot of areas. Has that credibility in a sense. And you talked about KenPom earlier. And when you look at that model, and people reference it every single year because it becomes so accurate, and the things, the different qualifiers and the different pieces and variables that go into that, they end up being the defining traits of a lot of teams that go on to Elite Eights, Final Fours, national championship runs, those kind of things. In those years where you're still kind of creating and fine-tuning a lot of these models and deals, did that credibility, I would assume, came with a lot of success in your models? Is that kind of how it worked? Is when your models correlated very correctly, people started taking maybe a little more serious?
Kind of, yeah. So the first 3 years that I really started, I created a Twitter account and I was posting game scores online for every single game. So this would have been probably like 2015 to 2017. I found every single computer rating that I could that had predictions for Division III football.
Okay.
And I tracked have you ever heard of the predictiontracker.com?
Yep.
Yeah. So I did what they do, but I did it for just Division III. And the first year my model did all right, but then like the next 2 years, I was pretty consistently either the number 1 or number 2 model. The other one that was really good isn't around anymore. Atomic ratings. They're based out of, I think some guy from Alabama was doing it, and that was a really good model. But then the other thing too is like if you just take them all and you average them together, that was better than any one model. But
yeah.
I'll also, a little correction, I don't think I'm innovating on any of this stuff because this is like what I do in my spare time. I read what other people are doing, like Bill Connolly for ESPN, another guy that I've actually bounced ideas off of him on Twitter a few times, and like reading about how does ESPN do their football power index, like
almost aggregating in a sense, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm taking all the ideas that I think could work for Division III, but instead of just copy pasting what they did for college basketball or FBS football, I'm like, okay, how can I make this idea specific to Division III?
Yeah, tailor it for, like you talked about, your niche and that kind of deal, which is really neat. And, that way of thinking maybe doesn't always sit well with everyone because emotions are a big part of this game, and I can certainly appreciate that. Such was the case. You released the 2024, those preseason rankings with every single Division III football team, and seemed to get a good variety of responses there. Talk about, I guess, specifically with this model, this predictive model, what goes into those calculations, how obviously you ultimately get this final culmination, this list.
Yep. So you take just kind of like a weighted average of the last, I do 5 years. And about 80% of that is going to be how you finished the year before. And then the other 20% is an average of the previous 4 years. And then that's the bulk of it. And then from there, I tweak it up and down based on, is your head coach returning? How many returning starters do you have? How many returning passing yards, passing attempts, rushing yards, rushing attempts? and then all the defensive statistics. That is still in flux, just because I'm not going to know who's on teams' final rosters until like a week before the games start.
And that goes back to you talking about getting information on these teams. And I know it, I think, as well as most, that finding information on players, coaches, other people involved with Division III football and lower level football in general, that can be a hassle.
Oh yeah, it's brutal. So like the stats.ncaa.org, that's where I get most of my stuff, because that's at least all in one place.
Yep.
But when I do have to go to like a team's website, you got probably for some schools one SID at the smaller schools, and then other ones that are going to have the SID and then like one student assistant, and they've got 19 sports to cover. So
yep,
there's going to be some things slipping through the cracks, but they do a great job for the most part. The thing that gets me is sometimes when it's like, okay, your NCAA roster, this guy is T.J, and then on your school's website, he's TJ, no periods. And then I'm trying to do my data stuff, and those guys don't match up, and that's frustrating. But
trust me, I've been there, done that. I work very closely with our SIDs up here at Northern, and I can tell you, like, talk about a thankless gig, first of all, right? And just the behind-the-scenes people that that make a lot of stuff happen for small school athletics. And if it weren't for them, we would have just about nothing, because like you said, that they are basically the main point of contact, whether we know it or not, of where we get the variety of our information, whether it is those game day stats and those other kind of information, articles, releases, the things that I always try and research before we get people on here. But staying on the thought of those predictive models, you talk about these lines, these theoretical lines that you put on the 2024 schedule for a lot of these teams. And I know one that at least caught my eye for sure was this one on the Cortland Dragons, right? Talking about how not just favored, how highly favored they would be in this 2024 season using your model. And I know, again, talking for someone from an outside perspective, and I saw people say this, and I certainly understand where they're coming from. After a year where, yes, they experience a ton of success, they go and win the national championship, they lose a good deal, and a good deal being their two top pass catchers, both finding NFL opportunities, which is fantastic in its own right. Even with all of that being the case, you bring back a just big-time accolade receiving head coach, obviously one of the best, at least in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, the way Zach has performed. Talk about this model and I guess more specifically what goes into this and some of those lines on the game-specific basis.
Right. So for each game, it's the line is just home field advantage, and then whatever one team's rating is minus the other.
There you go.
So that, like the actually predicting the lines, that's super easy. It like the complicated part is making the preseason ratings.
Okay.
So the like looking at Portland specifically for the preseason ratings, they did not finish last year as my number one. North Central did. I mean, if you look at the full season and not just like the last 3 weeks, which the last 3 weeks, Cortland was playing better ball than North Central was. But for the previous 12 games, North Central was just an absolute monster. So I actually thought when I posted that and my ratings had North Central, then Whitewater, then Portland, I'm like, oh man, people are going to be upset with me that Portland's so low and that these lines are too close. And then I got more pushback for the lines being too big. Like people that are fans of like, especially Susquehanna, because I mean, they beat them last year. You know, crazy fourth quarter comeback.
Of course.
But if I take away that fourth quarter from what Portland did last year and use that as like, this is how good they are, ignore that one quarter. That one quarter is an aberration. This prediction for this next year is a step back. Like receiving production is the biggest part of the returning production formula for what I do on offense, at least. So like losing those two guys is a big hit. But you can also look at, there's one game last year that Burgess did not play.
Yep.
And that was until the playoffs. That was their best performance all year in the regular season.
Okay.
So like,
interesting.
There's a lot of like game to game, teams are not the exact same team every single week. If they were, either Susquehanna would have won the national title or Cortland wouldn't have, right? Like upsets happen. Teams play better some weeks. They play worse. I mean, especially like you go talk to coaches, they're going to be like, man, week of finals every single year, and our kids are just out of it, especially if it's a school that does like trimesters instead of semesters. They're
Yes.
Like, that trimester finals week, you go look at our record, we're terrible that week. So teams play better, they play worse. This is like a model like what I do. It says this is the average of how good you're going to play. Some weeks better, some weeks worse. So,
yeah. I mean, you talk about Susquehanna, they go on, they beat what would be the eventual national champion, and then go on to have their hearts broken against Grove City, and then even just continuing on that side of the bracket, they're a kick away from sending Cortland back, and there's all these different deals, man, and these different levels.
Endicott had a pass sail over the receiver's head in the end zone, like
there you go.
So there's 5 plays in 5 different games you could pick out for Cortland and say any one of these plays goes the other way, they're not national champs. So there's so much crazy stuff that can happen in a football game that, like, I know I'm putting these lines out, and on average I'm going to miss by about 2 touchdowns on every single one of these. But I still have some coaches, they'll like send me a DM on Twitter after the game, and they'll be like, man, I thought we had a better shot than you gave us, but no, you were pretty spot on.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. You do get messages like that sometime, like,
oh
yeah,
there's a couple
of
coaching staffs. Yeah, there's a couple coaching staffs that they'll send me messages about 5-6 times a year. And I'm not going to say who it is, but it is kind of funny to get their perspective on what they think, and then how they feel after the games happen too.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah, looking at that, forward thinking, and then in retrospect, and going back and kind of reflecting on that is, from a coach perspective, very different. But sticking on those, those models, and it feels like with any kind of ratings, schedules, those kind of deals, your models, and rightfully so, put a lot of emphasis on the conference strength of the conference, and kind of that competition is a big indicator of that. And as such, the WAC always seems to be at a top of a lot of those, like I said, deservingly so. What is it about that league that makes it so elite? Is it what they do out of conference in the playoffs? Something else? Is there anything about that league that really, because everyone knows, like, that is, as far as just conference play goes, that is the cream of the crop. There's so many top dogs in that conference. But what is it in your models that really sets them ahead, if there's one piece or a couple of them?
So, like, in terms of the model, it's all based on how good they play when they're playing teams outside of their conference.
Okay.
So, like,
conference,
the out of conference play is what makes them good in the ratings. But what makes them actually good at football, having coached in the league and then lived in Wisconsin for a few years, there's no bad teams. Like, you can look at the teams who were at the bottom of the conference last year, Eau Claire and Stevens Point. They've got just as much administrative support from their AD and the college chancellor as every other school in that conference. Eau Claire just built this outstanding new facility out there.
Oh yeah, we know all about that.
And I pretty much every single team in that conference has won a playoff game in the last 2 decades. There is no other conference that you can go top to bottom and say every single team here has won a game in the postseason in the last 2 decades. Like, the kids on this team, 19 to 22-year-olds, every single kid was alive the last time this team won a postseason game.
Yeah.
And that is not the case in most conferences. There's just so much variability between how much funding the football programs are getting and how much support they're getting from their administration. Like, just being able to fund enough coaches to go out and recruit. Yep. And that's not something that they got to worry about in the Wisconsin conference.
I hear you. And I know a big piece of that too is you talk about the football landscape in Wisconsin. You've got the WAC, which is so prominent. You have Madison, and then what else, right? You talk about kids wanting to stay home. You don't have that presence. You look at, I'm a Michigan guy.
You got the NISC coming in and poaching kids, and then that's about it.
Yeah, really. And now you have schools like Northern Michigan is a great example of trying to get down. We brought in a ton of kids from the Wisconsin area, but obviously have not performed very well against those squads in recent years. But you look at a state like Michigan, which is very much the opposite. You have everything from, I believe we even have a JUCO now for a very prominent D3 presence with the MIAA. You go up to the NAI level, you have the MFSA, I believe. And you go D2 in the GLIAC. You've got the Group of 5 with the MAC, the FBS, and there's all these different levels. It's so overly saturated, and to see that other contrast side of that in Wisconsin, you're left with a lot of kids who want to stay relatively close to home and play high caliber football, but it just doesn't have that Division II or Division I tag on it because they're just not big enough, not strong enough to play at Madison.
We had All-Americans just fall into our lap at Platteville when I was there. Like they got recruited before I got there, but the coaches would say like, yeah, this kid just showed up on a junior visit day. We didn't know who he was, and we kept in contact with him, and hey, now look, he's a 2-time All-American. Awesome. Like that's not going to happen at some little liberal arts school in small town with Michigan, Iowa. Like those guys are busting their. Oh, did I lose you?
I got you on the voice. Lost the video for a sec there. Yeah, but I still hear you.
I don't know what happened, but yeah, those guys they're going all over the place, just scraping every single school that they know to try to find guys.
Absolutely, man. And I guess I'll leave you with this one before I let you go. What's next for you? Are there any big plans on the horizon as far as you and your coverage for D3 football in the next couple of years? Or is it just a lot of, like you say, refining and continuing to provide that coverage and that insight?
Oh, I've got so many ideas that I've got half baked in my brain. I don't know that I'll be doing a podcast or anything like that. Just I don't have the technical ability to do it.
That's
but
fair.
I'm gonna keep doing my ratings. I do end of season awards just to get something different out there for individual awards. I call it analytical All-American teams.
Yep.
But other things I want to do analytically, I mean, they're all half baked at this point, but I got stuff. But I'm focused on. I'm a high school coach too, and that starts up in June here. So that's
awesome.
That's what I'm focusing on for this summer. I'm pretty much done with what I'm going to do on the D3 football side. Now I'm focusing on Iowa high school football.
Hell yeah, sweet man, absolutely. I'm excited to watch and continue to follow along with your coverage. Good luck with the high school season, and like I said, you're not going to be starting a podcast anytime soon. You got an open invite on this one, though. I appreciate you coming on and chatting.
Sounds great. All right, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Talk to you later.
Have a good night. Once again, thank you, Logan, for coming on. Appreciate your candor, your conversation, and we're gonna finish off today going into the portal tracker, the portal updates. I feel like we need like a sound effect over here for the portal tracker update, especially when it comes to D2 football. That's what we're focusing on today. And I think the first guy that it makes sense, we talked about him on the show for a while. We actually had him on the show way back when. Sheen Butler-Lawson, the running back from Minnesota State Mankato. He was a Harlan Hill finalist, AFCA first-team All-American, AP first-team All-American, D2.com, D2CCA. Basically consensus All-American Sheen was over for the Mavericks. He was also first-team All-Conference, of course. This dude did it all for Mankato. When I say Harlan Hill finalist, at least in my book, I don't vote on the award, right? I'm not privileged enough to have that power, but at least in my book, this dude, for 3/4 of the season, I think had a very great argumentative case for the Harlan Hill Award coming out of Minnesota State, especially for a running back. He was really doing it all for that squad. He's a back that is very multifaceted. I think he's a great example of an all-purpose, all-down type of back. Can do it in between the tackles, can get outside, is shifty in space. Just gifted in a lot of different aspects. Seeing him play on film and watching his tape, seeing what he's able to do is nothing short of impressive. And you look at this last year in 12 games, a little over 200 attempts. The dude had about 1,500 yards, averaging 6.6 a touch, 15 touchdowns, and he's averaging over 120 a game. Like, this guy was getting it done, and we talked about the NSIC, the strength of that conference earlier in the episode, and Sheen is a guy that it just makes sense. For him on paper, I'd have him not quite in the same category, but very similar to a guy like Jay Harris, though I think their playing styles are quite a bit different. Jay Harris, the guy coming out of Northwest Missouri State, who is now up at Oregon, so obviously quite a different jump than Indiana State in its own regard, but those two guys, like, guys who just have the skill sets to play at the Division I level. And so shout out to Sheen. We appreciated having him on the show way back, and really excited to follow him along in his journey over there with the Sycamores, right? The Sycamores over there at Indiana State. As far as other offers from him, Northern Arizona did come calling, as well as Tennessee State. So he did have a couple other D1s on the table at the time being. He chose Indiana State. I haven't spoken with him. I don't know why, but he chose Indiana State. He believes the Sycamores are the best fit for him. So that's the first stop in our portal tracker is right there in Sheen Butler Lawson. The next stop gets to be a little bit big time. How about Xavier Suggs? The defensive lineman from Grand Valley. He's 6'3", 280 pounds. He's not a guy that maybe filled up the stat book last year, a little over 20 tackles, 5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. But he's a guy on the defensive line that you know is a game changer, a game wrecker, an influencer of the line of scrimmage, those kind of things. You can see it if you're watching on YouTube. He's making the jump from D2 Grand Valley all the way to the SEC with LSU. He will be joining the Tigers. What an awesome move for the guy. He was second team all GLIAC selection in 2023. And with this guy, like, this is not a fluke. His other offers, I'm going on the list here: Michigan, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Missouri, Florida State, USC, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I got bored of listing them. I just put and more at the bottom, right? This is not a fluke. The dude doesn't have some random connection to LSU. This is a dude that certainly has earned his way on there, and these college coaches see something in him that they really like, and they're willing to offer a spot on their squad. And I guess while we're talking about LSU and the move up there, how about the pictures from the official visit? It's something, as someone who works in the creative from the college football and college athletics landscape, I love looking at the official visit pictures. I'm sure you guys do as well. These backdrops are pretty nice. That one's my favorite right there. You got the state of Louisiana, the outline behind it with the neon lights, and then this one, like the old ballpark seats. That's glorious with the old school LSU Tiger behind them. Yeah, whoever's doing LSU creative, they ought to give you a pump in your paycheck, man. Like that's pretty sweet. But you know, kind of a personal anecdote here. I had the chance to play against Xavier when he was in high school, and I went to Lake Orion. It was the Clarkston rival squads, and I was playing fullback, running back at the time. Dude's playing defensive end. He's a year older than myself. And when I tell you, you know, first of all, the dude didn't move the way he does now. Like he still had very much a D1 frame in high school. You could tell that this dude was going to go play high-level college football somewhere. He did not move the way he does now. He's done a lot in terms of his development from his junior, senior year of high school to where he's at now, you know, 4 years or so into college and into that landscape. So shout out to himself and also to Grand Valley for getting to that point. But, you know, when I tell you, like, this is just a dude that, it doesn't mean everything, but he passes the eye test, man. He passes the eye test. You watch the guy on tape, he just looks the part and he makes the plays. And that's where I keep going back to, because unlike some of these other guys we talk about that have these All-American selections and these other deals, he might have not had the statistical production, but he's a guy in that line of scrimmage that I think anyone who played for, with, or against him would all agree that this is the dude that has so much influence on that line of scrimmage. And just still, even being, you know, 3-4 years into this thing, he's got a lot of raw talent that I think a lot of these schools appreciate. So I know I appreciated playing him. I loved just knocking heads with this dude. And he was a tough SOB, tough son of a bitch to go against, but I appreciated it. He made me better, and I hope that he would say the same thing. But excited for him and excited to see that jump. And there was some rhetoric and some conversation on Twitter, you know, if you go back talking about him. And, you know, I followed him, I was trying to send him a message, but one of the associate athletic directors from Grand Valley had promoted that tweet about JVR and some of their guys at Grand Valley, because they've had quite a few go on to the larger Division I levels, and basically using it as a recruiting tool of saying, hey, you can come to Grand Valley, we're going to get you at a higher program. And I know there were a couple of guys, former alum, that saw these tweets and the messaging and kind of the point they were trying to get across and said, should we really be promoting this? Like, should this be operated and approached and promoted as a feeder program where you come here and we develop you for somebody else? And I personally, from being on both sides of this thing, I played college football, I've been around it, obviously I haven't coached it, but just being around in this capacity, I can see both. Excuse me, the allergies are just killing me right now. I can see both avenues here and both lines of thought. I don't think either are incorrect, right? For a school like Grand Valley, I think for a kid transferring out and especially moving up to a Power 4, not only a Power 4, to the SEC, right? You very well could and should spin that into a positive for your program. Because if in this day and age you aren't doing that, you need to have other tools to bring in the allure of the transfer portal and get these guys to come to your school to be able to compete at a high level. And this is probably one of the best tools for guys who are probably former Division I athletes, maybe making a jump down to D2 to play at Grand Valley and other schools like that. I totally understand promoting this and trying to flip the script on that, if you will. From the former player's perspective, I absolutely understand. Like, you know, what are the things that make us so proud to be a Laker? What are the things that make us so proud to be a Grand Valley guy? And then you go out and leave that behind. Now, the two things for me, and the two reasons why maybe I side with the other side of the argument a little more, one is that Xavier is a grad transfer. From everything that I've seen that I know, is that he got his degree from Grand Valley, and now he's moving on. So he's not in the undergrad. He is a graduate from Grand Valley State University, and now is pursuing another opportunity at another institution. That, for me, is a big thing. I think that, because even you look at in the past, for as much as the transfer portal rules have changed, the graduate transfer rule has been in effect for quite some time now, and that's something that has not changed. I don't see it changing, where if you get your degree, you receive your degree from your former university, college, institution, whatever, you're able to go on and pursue another opportunity. That's the first thing for me. The second thing is obvious, I think. You go from Grand Valley to LSU, man. Like, Grand Valley, as big as they are, they're probably 25,000 plus strong. It really should be a Division I, probably will be in the next couple of years. You just can't compete with LSU. And you probably are never going to, because of the brand and because of just what they have going on. And that's not even talking about NIL. Like, I wonder how much money, and I have no idea, but I wonder how much money Xavier is getting to go and play and suit up in that purple and gold for the Tigers, you know, down there in Louisiana. That's something Grand Valley cannot match. And as much as friendships and culture and winning history and tradition and those kind of things matter, if you get thrown a bag, you get thrown a bag. And so for me, I'm like, I get it. I get understanding, like, you know, you don't want to do that. But if you're Grand Valley, I think it's the right thing to do. Spin this as a positive, as, hey, we prepared our guy. He played some great football for us. He got his degree at this institution, and now he's moving on and going on to bigger and better. But that's my spiel on that. Two more segments of this week's transfer portal update. The first comes from a former defensive lineman over there at Northwest, as in Northwest Missouri State, and that is, oh, look at that camera. You like that one behind me there, huh? How about Kobe Claiborne making the jump? Not quite to Power 4, but to a very quality national contender and national champion in the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. That is a big-time move for the kid. He's 6 foot, 270 pounds. Once again, a grad transfer. He came in during COVID. He redshirted, played 2 years of good ball for the Bearcats over there in Northwest Missouri. He was a second-team All-MIAA selection this past fall. And not that him and Xavier have very similar playing styles or builds whatsoever, I think. But when you look at this guy, I think the one thing that does stand out very similarly to Xavier, and a guy over at Grand Valley that I think is comparable, is the fact that this guy might not have filled up the stat sheets where he was at. But once again, he's a guy that is constantly disrupting plays. And you'll see they really are. Here's a great clip against UCM and an offensive line unit, an offensive unit in general that had a great 2023 season. But he's a guy that's constantly disrupting plays. When you wear Agent Zero, especially on the defensive line, you know the dude has to be somewhat decent, because there's a ton of different DBs, wide receivers, running backs, all those things that are vying for that number, literally everyone in the field. But again, I just thought for this guy, I haven't broken down the film. I've just seen what I'm showing you guys and kind of just breaking down and trying to be the guy that points a lot of these things out. But for Kobe Claiborne, shout out, dope name, by the way. For him, you know, this is a great move for him. And Northwest is a squad that, once again, I think very similar to Grand Valley, has that winning history, tradition, and culture, and just a great player and coach base over there. And when you have some of your best games against some of your best opponents, you keep seeing these clips from UCM and Central Missouri, that helps your stock a lot. That really boosts your stock for these squads, because when you're going back there and sacking the Harlan Hill winner behind a very talented offensive line unit that put up some big-time rushing games as well and was really prominently good at protecting the passer, schools pick up on that, man. Schools pick up on that very much. But shout out to Kobe. Excited to see what his journey looks like at the Division I level. Finally, though, to close out the episode, IUP has kind of nailed the transfer portal. They're bringing in a lot of talent at different positions all across the board. We'll start right here. Pull it up. Oh, man. Allergies are something else right now, right? Whew. We'll start right here. How about Randy Nkungu, defensive lineman from Millersville? He's making his way over to join a pretty stacked defensive line unit right now for IUP. He was an all-PSAC second team honoree in 2023 and 9.5 sacks, 15.5 TFLs over 3 seasons. He's a guy that's looking to make even more of an impact, maybe be more of a feature guy on this defensive line for Indiana University of Pennsylvania. That's the whole deal for those of you not familiar with it. And then IUP, in another smart move, they are going to be the beneficiaries of not one, but 2 guys coming over from Notre Dame, Ohio, the first of which being Nathan Rosario Santos, the linebacker, and then Lavelle Gibson, a defensive end, both, like I said, from Notre Dame, Ohio, the school that shut down. And so IUP is one of many schools that have been the beneficiary of these guys wanting to continue their playing career and finding different spots at other Division II institutions. So they pick up this dynamic duo, they call them, on the defensive end. Shout out the guy doing the jersey swaps, by the way. Those are pretty awesome. Finally, though, and I think maybe the most influential and important transfer for this IUP squad is on the outside at wide receiver. That is Keenan Brown, and you might be asking me why that is most important and why that's such a big deal. And I'll tell you right now, look at the dude throwing him the football in this clip at his former institution, the Mavericks from Colorado Mesa. Yes, you're correct. That's Karst Hunter, the current quarterback at IUP. Him and Keenan Brown connected for over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2022. That was only in 8 games. Right? So you're talking about a guy that has had really great success on the outside, has a great rapport, I'm assuming has a great relationship off the field with Karst, who we've had on the show in the past. Really enjoyed having Karst on here. This is a guy that's going to come in and I think make an immediate impact. To an IUP receiver core that's been decimated a little bit, this is a guy they needed on the outside, and I would assume the recruiting pitch was pretty easy with Keenan here, getting him over and having him come back and compete with his former quarterback. That's pretty exciting news, man. We love a little bit of a reunion that the transfer portal brings about. Here's the shot from Karst himself when the news was officially broken. You can see right there. Those are the guys back when they were at Colorado Mesa, which those uniforms, by the way, pretty underrated. I like those a lot. But I think that's going to be huge for IUP. They've had a pretty good streak here these last couple of years of bringing in grad transfer quarterbacks. Just a couple of years left on their eligibility. And IUP, you cannot count them out of the PSAC, man, this upcoming year. I know that's a gauntlet when you talk about teams that have done it in the past. This past year, it was Slippery Rock and Kutztown, and then you've had Shepherds of most recent history and those kind of things. But IUP is very much going to be in the mix, and I think a lot of it is going to be in part to those 2 gentlemen right there. So that is it for the transfer portal tracker today. I'm coming up right at an hour for as far as the episode goes tonight. Thank you for sticking with me if you stuck through all of it. If not, well, go screw yourself. No, not really. I appreciate you all for tuning into whatever portion you did. But that's all for this week. You know I'll be back with another one next week. For D1 Rejects, this has been Kobe Manzo.